Alright, what's up guys? I'm back with another build. This one is a little bit different. I paid $250 for it, but I also plan to just do very minimal work. I'm only going to paint the handlebars, paint the front guard. You know what? I might not even paint the handlebars or the front guard, because wiping the dust off, everything still has really good shine to it. So does the plastics. I don't think this thing's going to need really any work. The guy said it fired up. He said it's a little cold-blooded. It took a little while to fire up. So what I am guessing is that the carburetor's bad because it's leaking or it needs cleaned. But for $10, I'm just going to replace the carb. I'm going to replace the fuel lines, new air filter, and just go through all the electrical. But it's leaking fuel out of the overflow. Other than that, I don't see anything wrong with that. I am going to completely flush the gas, check the compression, check the spark, probably put a new spark plug, and I think that's pretty much it. Other than that, I'm going to clean the shit out of it. The guy put new tires on it. He hasn't put air in the tires for, I think he said 6 months or so, and they still have air in them. And he said the tires are fairly brand new, which by the looks of it, I believe him. I am going to remove this shitty light because it vibrates and it's broken and there's tape on it. It looks like shit. That one, I'm going to check that it still works, and it's missing the headlight. It has this big beam thing in the front. I'm going to remove that because it looks like shit, and put a new headlight on it. Other than that, I'm literally just going to flush the carb, flush the fuel, check the compression, and the guy even recently changed the oil, so I don't even have to do that. And what else? Oh yeah, all the connectors to this was obviously stored inside. But all the connectors on the wiring harness, they're still, like, they still have give to them. They don't, usually, like, if you squeeze one of the connectors, they just break. They're brittle because they're old. But this one still has a lot of give to it. Like, I squeezed the shit out. I took off this little side panel thing right here, and I squeezed a few of the connectors, and they're all still good. So as long as all the electrical still works, I'm going to reuse this wiring harness, and it's going to be a very, very simple build. And to be honest, oh yeah, I'm going to paint the rims though black, just because I think it'll look nicer. Also, to be honest, I think this guy just wasn't mechanically inclined, so he just didn't know exactly what to do or what to look for. But anyways, I'm going to get started on this. I'm going to get everything torn apart. I'll be right back. Okay, something I didn't mention, but something that does bother me, is that these brakes, usually all the brakes that I do, you push them and they stop. Whoopsie, I loosened the handlebars already. But you push the brakes and they stop. You really have to grip down on these for them to engage. So I will go through all the brakes. I don't know what the foot brakes look like. Foot brakes are non-existent. That's a hydraulic foot brake. So I will bleed those brakes and see how that goes. And hopefully I don't have to order another hydraulic foot brake. But if I do, I guess it is what it is. Other than that, this thing really just needs a really good cleaning and a new carb, and it'll be ready probably maybe 2-3 hours. But I do expect to sell this for $600, maybe $550 at the lowest. Anyways, I'm gonna get going on this, and I'm pretty happy with this one so far, especially the tires. Tires are actually really nice. Oh, I am gonna paint the rims black. I can't remember if I mentioned that yet. But this thing really just needs a really good deep clean. Other than that, it's still a really nice quad. So what I normally do is just tear everything down and get it ready to go to the car wash. That'll have to come off after. Oh wait, I forgot to check if all the electrical worked. I'm gonna check all the electrical before I can get back to you. Okay, so as you guys know, I don't troubleshoot electrical at all. For $30 and 40 minutes, I'll just replace it all. It only takes like 30 to 40 minutes to replace it all after you tear all the plastics and everything off it. But I'm going to check all the electrical right now and go from there. So brakes work. Ignition. So let me remind you you guys, I paid $250 for this, and it obviously just has fuel issues. I am gonna, on metal gas tanks, I do drain them and rinse them out with distilled vinegar and let them sit overnight. But all the electrical appears to be good. Electrical's not working like the guy said it was. A little frustrating, but again, it is what it is. I know what I'm buying when I get myself into it, and I'm okay with it. Actually, still, even though I'm spending an extra $25, $30 on the harness, I'm still okay with that. Because everything else works like it should. So, let me think, $250 plus the carb and fuel lines, maybe, let's say $15. $15. The battery that I got out of it's still good. It's on the charger. Everything else is still good on it. I think $250, 15, it's $265 plus 30. Yeah, I'll still make $250, $300 profit for maybe 3-4 hours worth of work. I'm with it. Anyways, I'm gonna get all this stuff tore apart. I'll be right back. And ignition switch is disconnected. So plastics are off. We're still in really good shape. It's kind of weird working on a quad that hasn't been touched, because I've already worked on a ton of quads that have just been taken apart and destroyed by people. I guess I can't really say destroyed, but they've been taken apart and have had better days, I guess you could say. Anyways, I'm going to snip all these little connectors and take it all apart. I'm going to check the compression. I'm only going to check for compression today, actually. Check the oil. The guy said he recently changed it. I didn't look at it because I wasn't worried about it. Yeah, that oil is still pretty good, actually. The only cable you 100%... Oh, yeah, by the way, I always reuse all my stators, and then I resell the stators on Amazon for $10. Usually I sell them for $8. Just because it's a little cheaper than anyone else is selling them for, and I get some of the money back for the harnesses. And I'm just cutting all these zip ties off. Getting all harness taken apart. All this stuff's actually really easy to do. And you have to keep the starter wire, because the new harness does not come with the new starter wire. Okay, so I'm a little bummed out that my phone died, and I actually just finished removing the wiring harness. This is just to the kill switch. I'm gonna end up taking this off. If they want it, they can keep it. If somebody else wants it, they can have it. This is to the stator. I always reuse all the stators. And this is the wire to the starter. You need that because the new wiring harness does not come with one. And other than that, take everything else off. This wire right here is for the foot brakes. I don't ever wire those in. I only wire the handbrakes in. I'm not a real big fan of the way this handbrake is, so I'm going to adjust those to just make it tighter. And this foot brake has 0 compression, so I'm going to open it up, bleed the brakes, put new brake fluid, and see if that fixes all my issues. If not, then I will be digging into the brakes. But for the time being, I'm not going to worry about it. Anyways, I'm going to pump those brakes. Literally just pump this. Well, I'm going to take this cap off, pump these brakes, open this, bleed it, and repeat the process until my brakes work. And I'm going to do that right now before I go to the car wash. And I believe that is it. Alright, so I typically don't mess with the foot brakes unless I absolutely have to. This one does not appear to be in bad shape. A little cover on the boot looks loose, but other than that, it doesn't look in bad shape. Probably just looks old. There's 2 little hex cap screws. The cap pops off. Like I said, I'm just gonna bleed these brakes. I don't think they need changed. I just think they need bled and new brake fluid in it, because brake fluid, people don't know this either, but brake fluid does expire. One last thing I forgot to mention. This cable is to the brakes. It just sends a signal to your wiring harness that says the brakes are pressed in. The quad is good to start. But I'm gonna drain these real quick. I'll be right back. Actually, you guys can tune in for it. You have to keep the brakes compressed while you open it, and then shut it while they're still compressed, and then you can release off it, or else you will not have pressure on your brakes, which means your brakes won't work. This is actually the same concept as like working on car brakes or any kind of hydraulic fluid brakes. Okay, so now that the foot brakes are working right, like I said, you really have to squeeze on these to make them work or make them engage. There's a couple different ways you can adjust these. There's screws here where you can adjust them out or adjust them in. And then you can tighten them against this handle. There's also adjustments here that are about halfway down. That actually works with the throttle cable also. And there also is adjustments down there. Typically, when I adjust them, I just adjust them from here. I personally just think it's easier. Usually I just use a pair of pliers, adjust them out, and then tighten them back in against it. And if that's still not enough, then I adjust them here. If that's still not enough, I adjust them at the very bottom. But typically, this is more than enough. And I usually leave about at least 3 or 4 threads, because I don't like to cut it too close to the edge. Oh yeah, those are a lot tighter. I like it to where like you can't push this in unless you really squeeze at it, because it keeps your kids from being able to ride it or jump on it. Like little kids will not be able to get on it and squeeze this down really hard and be able to start the quad, because you have to bypass the brakes in order to do that, which little kids typically don't know how to do that. Also, the foot brake, I don't wire that for the same reason, so a little kid can't just come over here and jump on it. A parent actually has to come over here and engage the brakes in order to get the quad fired up. Anyways, this thing's ready to go to the car wash. Brakes are done. Brakes are actually really tight. Yeah, this thing ain't going nowhere. It's actually a really nice quad. I'm pretty happy with. Even though I paid $250 for it, $250's at the very high end of what I'll pay for these. It's literally the highest I'll pay for any quad. I will never go over that, or for a kid's quad. If it's like a mid-size 125 frame or bigger, then I'll pay a little more. But typically people sell those for about the same. Because usually I buy them broken, I don't buy them in this good a shape. That's the most important part. I'm gonna get the soda in the back of my truck so I can get it to the car wash tomorrow. I will also take those plastics to the car wash, and the only thing I'm going to paint on these, I think, is just the handlebars, these little clips, and then that front guard in the front. Yeah, you can see it all on camera. Other than that, I'm not messing with anything else. And I'll check for compression right now. I'll show you how to check compression. Alright, so I'm just going to show you how I check for compression. I remove the spark plug, get my compression tester, thread this into the spark plug hole. Maybe an easier way to do it is just to leave this end piece off like this. It's just easier to thread. Thread it in fairly tight. There's little rubber gasket O-ring type things. Put the end on. By the way, I can't remember if I said it, but remove the spark plug. I got the new spark plug that I'm gonna go ahead and install after I check for compression. I know it has good compression. Also, when you're checking for compression, you have to open the throttle all the way, which this has a throttle adjustment screw, so I'm gonna have to back that all the way out. Next thing you're gonna do is connect the starter wire to the positive side of the battery. Oh yeah, make sure your brakes are engaged. Actually, it won't fire anyways because it won't get spark. Okay, and then you have the starter wire connected to the positive side of the battery, another old battery cable connected to the negative side, and then you just strike the starter. Compression tester just fell. But we're already at 80 PSI, with only striking it a couple times. And plus it fired up, so there wasn't that my mind was gonna have good compression. It's over 100 pounds without opening the throttle. I'm gonna remove this compression tester, put the new spark plug in, take off the battery, and get this loaded so I can take it to the car wash. Man, I'm actually pretty happy, and this is gonna be a super easy build. All right, so I actually started this last week and just didn't finish it. Got a little burnt out, and like I say, I do this for fun, not for money. I got everything all cleaned up. I got the old fuel drained out of it. I'm gonna pull this old fuel line off, rinse out the gas tank with new fuel, replace this carb right now, new air filter, and then I'm gonna do the electrical. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started on all this. You know what? I might not even replace the fuel lines if I'm being honest, because these fuel lines weren't leaking and they still feel fairly new. You know what? I'm actually gonna reuse these fuel lines. Oopsie, there's a little bit of fuel in that one, even though I already drained it. But I am gonna replace the carb for sure. That's actually the throttle I just took off. That's the throttle cable. That's the needle to the carb. All that stuff's really easy to replace. And these carburetor bolts are always 8 millimeter or 10 millimeter. For the most part, they're always 10 millimeter. Like I said, that guy replaced this carb and air filter and all that stuff, so I'm rubbing gas everywhere. So I'm guessing he replaced his fuel lines too, because they still look and feel brand new. Okay, just some quick advice. When you're doing these, it actually is a lot easier if you put the intake onto the carb before you install it. And don't forget that gasket on the bottom. There's a little O-ring in between this little spacer. But don't forget the gasket between the intake and the head or the engine. And it doesn't need to be super tight. Tighten one side, tighten the other, and then go back and tighten it. See if they tighten a little more. But make sure not to over tighten them. Because if you over tighten, you strip it. I will say it's a pain in the ass to drill and tap holes. So if you can avoid that, I would definitely avoid doing that. Alright, so I flipped the carb around. If you guys are ever having interference issues, try flipping the carb around and just set it in place, and that'll tell you if you have enough room, and it'll keep you from having to like make some makeshift air cleaner adapter or buy different air cleaners. I've done this multiple times, never had issues. Another tip is if you guys are putting on a fuel filters and you can't get them to just slide right on, rub some oil on them. The oil will end up running through the carb, so it's not that big of a deal. But there's also so little that it doesn't affect anything. Next thing I'm going to do is the wiring harness. But I'm going to just start doing that tomorrow morning. I just want to at least get a little bit done tonight. I plan to paint these rims also. I think I'm going to paint them black just so it matches the rest of the quad. I said I wasn't going to paint these handlebars. I am going to paint the handlebars, these little things, and this little grill guard. But again, I'll do all that tomorrow. I'm not in any rush to get this done. I have way too many projects right now anyways. So this one is selling right now. The guy's just going to get change. But back to this one. The next thing I'm going to do is the electrical. Carb's already installed. I let the gas sit overnight inside the tank. No fuel leaks anywhere. We'll just say win. Okay, so I have the wiring harness draped over this right now, and this is one of the reasons why I say to just leave everything completely disconnected until you can figure out actually leave everything completely disconnected until you can figure out that the wiring harness is working correctly. So I have the starter switch here. I'm hitting the start button, it's not working, but the lights work. So I'm guessing the starter works. I'm guessing there's either an issue with the CDI or a different component. This is the reason why I think there's an issue with the CDI or a different component. I'm guessing this starter coil is okay, because when I put these two together, it fires. So that's just touching these two posts together. That's the starter, that's the power wire. So I don't ever mess with any of these or troubleshoot at all. Also, hooking up the light shows me that the wire harness is working correctly. It might be the start button if I'm being honest, but I don't know that for sure until I switch out other components. I'm going to switch this out and see if it works. If that doesn't work, I'm going to switch this out and see if it works. I know this is working correctly. If not, the light wouldn't turn on. And I have had times where I had loose wires, but that's power going to that, so I know all this stuff's working correctly. So I would definitely check all these wires, make sure they're all seated correctly. You'll know right away if they're not. Sure. Oh, you know what? I hooked this up to the wrong wire. The black and the yellow, or the green and the yellow and the black are to the rear brakes. And then the green and yellow and then the red and yellow are to the front brakes. And then you got to put these two wires together to bypass it. So that's actually my issue. So now I know the wiring harness is working correctly. I'm going to check for spark, but I can't check for spark until I hook up this stator. And this stator connection is different than what is already on here. That's the stator connection. So I can hook up the ground, but I can't hook any of these up. I'm going to check and make sure I have enough splices. If not, this is as far as I can go right now. I'll be right back. But again, that's another reason why I say to leave everything draped before you start putting everything in place into its permanent place. Okay, so I got the stator hardwired in. Everything's working correctly that I know so far. Need to make sure the brakes are bypassed by holding the black and the black and then the green and the yellow wires together. Those actually connect to the handbrakes. They connect to these. Next thing I'm gonna do is check for spark. How I check for spark: bypass the brakes, put a spark plug in the boot, and then hold it against the head. No spark. Oh, that has to be on the run position. Ignition key has to be on. Got really good spark. I already know there's compression, so pretty much now it's just installing everything back. I'm going to disconnect this light. I only connected the light just to pretty much show to myself that the lights and everything are working correctly. Okay, so I've said this before and I will say this again. That's there's plenty of room there now. But once you have everything completely zip tied into place, just to make sure everything's running correctly. I know I had spark before, ignition, everything was working. I'm gonna go ahead and test fire it and get it to run while it's on the stand. If you do this while it's on the stand, make sure your back tires aren't gonna hit anything, because it'll fall off if it catches traction on anything. So turn your key on. Bypass the brakes. Oh, no battery. Hold on. Okay, let's try this again. Turn the key on, bypass the brakes, and no cigar. Oh, positive, negative. We're on the wrong side. By the way, if you hook up the negative and positive and leave it too long, it'll melt your wiring harness. Or if you don't hook up your grounds, it'll melt your wiring harness. Drop that screw. Have another one right here. And then just, if you put both poles to the starter solenoid together, it should turn over. Yep. So you know you got power. So keys on, brakes are bypassed, and still no go, man. Give me a second, let me figure out what it is. So I have all the hardware back in, all this, all these, the bolts underneath, these bolts. Anyways, I have it all cleaned up, all the hardware back in, all the wheels are painted. I have those right here, handlebars, the front guard, the gas cap, all that stuff's painted, everything's cleaned up. I'm literally just gonna put it back together and then I'm finished. Anyways, I'll be right back. Alright, so I just finished this one up. Make sure everything's still working. Run. I'm super happy with the way this turned out. This thing's super nice. Everything works on it. Lights work. Everything just turned. All the electrical works. Brake engagement works. Foot brakes work. Hand brakes work. I went through all the brakes. All the tires are seated fully. The guy before me told me he replaced the tires, and they do look fairly new. The side walls still have the little nipples on them. Seat's nice. Carb works. Choke on the carb works. All the electrical is nice and clean. New plugs, taillights, bulbs themselves are new, or the bulb itself is new. All the hardware's there. Complete quad. Fires up every time.